Hello, my name is Andre LaFontaine with Color Magazine, and today we're having a color conversation which strives to bring a casual and informative approach to thought leadership. We engage in influential we engage influential professionals of color on current events, passion projects, and everything diversity and inclusion. Today, today's presented in celebration of the 10th anniversary of Women of Color Leadership and Empowerment Conference. With that in mind, I have the honor of speaking with Emmy Award-winning news producer and award-winning author of the novel For Women, Nikesha Williams. Nikesha, would you just kindly tell our viewers a little bit about yourself?
Oh gosh, I am a two-time Emmy Award-winning news producer. I am an award-winning author. I am a full-time writer and writing coach, and I run my own publishing company, New Reads Publications, based here in Jacksonville, Florida. And I'm originally from Chicago, so I'm always going to be a Chicago South Side girl at heart.
Yeah, nice, nice. I think it's incredible. Just understanding your backstory a little bit. What kind of gravitated you towards stamping out a career in writing and eventually becoming your own publisher. Where did that originate, and how was that fire stoked consistently?
That fire was stoked by rejection. I wrote my first book, and really all of my books I wrote while I worked full-time as a television news producer. Even the book that I have coming out later this year, next month actually, I wrote full-time as a producer and then wife and mother. But what really kind of stoked the fire to keep going and to step out on faith was that the birth of my son. I gave birth to my son in 2015. That year of his leading up to his birth, when I was pregnant, I was actively writing my first novel, For Women, my debut. And the story with that, I had to write that novel twice because I started in 2013, and in 2014 I got 7 chapters from the end, and I lost the manuscript and I had to start over. And so I started over, found out I was pregnant, wrote all of 2014. My son was born in January, and in March of 2015 I finished my novel, and my son was 6 weeks. He was like literally playing at my feet because he had just woken up as I was working on the last page. And I knew then on that maternity leave that this is what I want to do. I want to wake up, go in my office, write, and not have to leave and go to work. And so I had an inkling of that when I was in undergrad, but it really hit home when I had my son. And so that really never left me. So 2015, I finished the novel. I worked with agents to get it ready for like a traditional publication, and it just wasn't acquired. It was a no-go, it was a no sale. I got really close, but ultimately no sale. And so for me, I was like, okay, well, I want it out in the world. I work in television, so I can drum up the kind of support and marketing that I need behind myself, and I'll just do it on my own. So I started my own company. I knew graphic designers from working in television who did my design. I built a website. I planned a release, and I did all of that myself, and then I didn't stop. So now we're 5 books later, and now I no longer work there. I knew I wanted to leave television. I knew I wanted to be home and present with my family. And working as a news producer is very, very demanding, and you kind of miss some moments with your family. And so with my husband's blessing, he was like, you know what, this is your last contract. Go ahead. I got you. Run. And so I've been running ever since. So that's what led me to this journey now.
Yeah, no, that's amazing, and please don't stop running. Just keep going. Like I think honestly, like I think it's really really dope what you do, and you kind of use. A lot of people think that like kind of how you're just talking about, like you use the connections you already had within the workspace that you already cultivated. That's a traditional workspace, and you use that as a way to leverage your passion projects, and now that's that's the main thing essentially, which I think is cool. Like, so actually, I want to talk about like you mentioned again your first novel, For Women. And I feel like thinking about that and thinking about your next novel, Beyond Bourbon Street. I feel like there are echoes of I would like to say that I'm a man of letters. I'm really into African American literary canon. So when I think of Beyond Bourbon Street, I think of If Beale Street Could Talk by James Baldwin. And when I think of For Women, I think of Nina Simone, that song that she wrote. So like, I kind of want to get into your headspace a little bit of like, how does, if it does at all, African American history within America influence, your writing and what you're talking about today, at all?
It heavily influences my writing. The Nina Simone reference is spot on. I have loved that song since the first time I heard it when I was a little girl. And so in the book, I'm talking about Stand Your Ground and Black Lives Matter, but from the point of view of 4 African American women. The book is set in Jacksonville, Florida, around the trials of Michael Dunn, who was convicted eventually of killing Jordan Davis, who was shot and killed at 17 years old on Black Friday, 2012, because his music was too loud. And so as a news producer, I was working all this stories, the Trayvons, the Jordan Davises, the Mike Browns, the Freddie Grays. And I was just like, where are the women? Where are the women? And where are the women that this has happened to that we don't know about? I know like right now there's a big campaign to get the officers who killed Breonna Taylor arrested. And it's like, her story has to go through extra hoops and jumps to be amplified, whereas there was immediate backlash after George Floyd. There was immediate backlash after Ahmaud Arbery. And Black women still have to fight to get the same recognition, even in death, that has been so unjust. And so For Women was like, I want to tell a story about Black women in every part of that situation. The victim, the suspect, the doctor, the news anchor, and everywhere in between, you see the stories of Black women amplified. And so I knew it was going to include 4 women, so the book was called For Women. And then I was intentional in my nod to Miss Simone, and that if you read the descriptions of the characters, even though they all have different names, and you know the song, you can match them up with who was in the song looks like what. And so I want to show that the degradation in color and experience and background. So that's where that For Women influence comes from. If Beale Street Could Talk, I like that reference in that, and I didn't think about it writing Beyond Bourbon Street, but my characters are married and they are getting ready to have their first child, and there are issues and drama around that, much like Beale Street. But the title itself really came from, my mother and father are both from New Orleans, Louisiana, and they now live in Chicago. They were part of the Great Migration, so to speak, in the late, early 60s maybe. Okay. And so when we would go home home to my mother and my father, they would say, we're going home to New Orleans. So even though I'm from Chicago, New Orleans was like my second home. Summers, holidays, we spent with my grandparents, maternal and paternal, on both sides. And so when Katrina happened, I was in college, and it was heartbreaking to watch this place that I had known so intimately as a child, that I felt very, very deeply rooted and connected to it. My family still lives there, outside of my parents, just drowning. My mother grew up in the lower Ninth Ward. So that was like home, going home to me. That was vacation, going to lower Ninth Ward. And I didn't look at it as a poor area, or an area that was working class, or that didn't have anything, or was that just abject poverty as it was portrayed to be in the aftermath of Katrina. I looked at it as, that's where my grandmother lives. That's where my grandfather lives. That's home. And so it's literally underwater, and that never really left me. And so as I was leaving undergrad, I had to write an honors thesis, and part of my major was creative writing, and I wrote this story about a couple rebuilding after Katrina in New Orleans. And as I've gotten older, that couple never really left me. And then after having my son, I began to think about that couple. I'm like, what would their lives look like now? And so I wrote Beyond Bourbon Street in 2016 and 2017, knowing I wouldn't release it to 2020, to talk about to coincide with the 15th commemoration of Hurricane Katrina, which is this August, as well as to say like, this is my contribution in a way to amplify what's happening, what's still happening in the city. A lot of people think that it's recovered, but the area that I knew so well really has not, and it has been left to be stagnant. And so the title is saying that, you go to New Orleans, and if you go for a festival or a concert, you really only see downtown, the French Quarter, Bourbon Street, the Superdome, whatever else. You don't see what's beyond that tourist section. And so that's what the title is, Beyond Bourbon Street. There's more to the city than the 12 blocks of the French Quarter and the downtown area.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think, and that's beautiful. Like, I think that, obviously a lot of, Black African-American culture that's consumed, it's only surface level, or people don't really want to see the hard truths that, you know, a lot of Black writers or entertainers have been bringing to light. There's a couple of questions I want to like ask from that, but I guess one that comes to the forefront is, you know, there was like 100 years ago, literally, there was the Harlem Renaissance when you have this influx of, you know, Black writers, of Black artists that, you know, shaped American culture. Now, literally, essentially, when you were writing your first novel, you were right in the middle of that. You know, that's when like Moonlight came out, Get Out, like, you know, all those things was coming out. How do you feel that you've added to the conversation? Because you legit have like added to the conversation of, yeah, this is, you know, we're peeling back, like, as you're saying, beyond Bourbon Street, beyond, you know, what you see in rap videos or what you see in the NBA or whatever. Like, these are real Black stories and they're nuanced. And as you mentioned a lot, you know, as Black people, we're not monoliths. So how do you think you've added to that discussion, I guess?
I like to play in the complexities of what it means to be Black, especially to be a Black woman. So my characters are intentionally messy. They intentionally have drama, either in their own heads or outside of them, that they have to coincide with. I also want to portray Black women as real women. Like, they can be married, they can be single, they can be in relationships, they can have relationships with each other, they cannot have relationships with each other, and just really dig into everything that it means to be a person. Because I feel like so often you get, as Spike Lee would say, you know, the magical Negro, where we have some type of like voodoo prowess that influences a white person's life, but you never really get to see us in our stories on a large scale, unless it's in, you know, something that's overly commercialized, and then you only really get to see a surface level of that, or something that is specifically guided toward a Black audience, so then it doesn't get mainstream appeal. And so even though I am an independent author and I don't have the backing of a major publisher, I still want my work to be on par with what would a major audience think of this, and how would they think about this, and what conversation would be sparked from it once it gets to them. Because even though I'm starting off indie, I have no doubt that it's only going to go beyond that. And so I want those conversations to continue even after I'm dead and gone. I wanted to stand and say, you know, if this is a picture of Black life, of Black womanhood, that we can rely on and see these women or these characters as people, and not just as caricatures or stereotypes or archetypes of themselves, or what we think them to be.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, I love kind of peeling that back and allowing that kind of discussion to be had. It's very necessary. I guess, yeah. So from that, just going back to, you know, because like I'm genuinely impressed that, you know, you've published so many times already. Like, what was the biggest barrier for, you know, what do you think is the biggest barrier for young African American writers to get published in the first place? Or kind of, you know, everyone has their own personal experience that, you know, hasn't been represented in literary canon as much as it should. So what do you think are the biggest barriers for someone like me or you to publish that kind of story?
I think the biggest barrier is access. Like most industries in this country, publishing is overwhelmingly white, and at some point overwhelmingly male. And so it's just having people who look like you in the rooms where decisions are made to say, no, hey, this is a good story that we should publish, or this is a good book that we should acquire, and not just having them to be too few and far between. And so there's a gatekeeper to get into the echelons of publishing. Some people could go get an MFA just so they can get a book deal. How much money are you spending on an advanced degree at a institution of higher education just so that you can get a book deal, because that's one of the pipelines into getting into mainstream traditional publishing? How much work do you have to put in building a social media following and being active on all the social media platforms to get the eye of an editor or a literary agent, just so that they can be your advocate to go to those gatekeepers and say, hey, I have a work that you should consider, and then begin to be lowballed with your advance. There's a gate at every step of the way in the traditional publishing journey that has not been broken down, simply because we are not there. We are underrepresented at every level, from those who own publishing companies the traditional way, those who work in publishing companies, those who work at literary agencies. we are just underrepresented. And so there's always a barrier. So for me, I wasn't able to bust through that wall or break down that barrier for whatever reason, because again, this industry is subjective. If someone says they don't like your work or they don't think that they can sell it, no matter how good you think it is, it's not going to go for them. But what indie publishing has done has allowed me to say, you know what, I'll be my own gatekeeper. I'll do it on my own, and I'll let the audience decide, and I'll let my work speak for itself. And so that's what I've been doing these last few years.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. That's incredible. I really respect that. So you have your Emmys in the back right over there. Tell me, like, what was going through your mind when you won your first one? Like, how was that like? What was that experience like? Or like, did you feel like, would you rank that as one of your greatest accomplishments? Or like, is that just something that you felt like the more you kept at work, as you're saying, the more you kind of pushed and like found your own avenue, like that kind of recognition was going to come. People are going to gravitate towards your stories or what you produce.
I was surprised by it. And for both Emmys I won, I did not go to the ceremony because I was doing things with my books. The first story with the Emmy is actually, I'm a big faith person, big believer. And so in 2016, there was a hurricane that was coming to Florida. And as a news producer, you're supposed to work the hurricane. You're not supposed to evacuate. But it was a category 4, and my husband was like, let's go. Yeah. And so I did the controversial thing, and I did not go to work. I evacuated with my husband and my family. And when I came back to work, I was demoted to the big shows in local news are like the 6 a.m. show, the 6 p.m. show, and the 11 p.m. show. At the time I was doing the 6 p.m. show, I had a normal schedule, 9 to like 6:30, whatever, and everything was fine. But when I came back and I did not work the hurricane, they put me back on the morning show, on a 7 a.m. show. And I was like, okay, I knew the risk. I still had a job. I worked the show, but in that time period that I was demoted, there was a story where there was a bank robbery and the man took 12 hostages. And for those who aren't familiar with breaking news, when something like that happens, it's not planned. You just have to go, your anchors, your reporting team, everybody has to go and go into the control room, get on TV, and stay on TV until the situation is over. And none of that is scripted or written ahead of time. So I was the producer who saw the news and said, oh, we got to go now. And I was basically keeping my anchors and all the information going and on TV for like 5 hours. I think it happened at like 7, 8 o'clock. And from 8 o'clock to like 1, 2 in the afternoon, I was at the helm directing the coverage. And so that was what my first Emmy was for. The Emmy nominations came out, I think, maybe a day after I had announced when I would do the release for my debut novel, For Women. And so I was like, oh, I've been nominated for an Emmy. I'm not going. That's the day my book drops. And I'm having my book party. Y'all go and let me know if I win. So December 2nd, 2017, I do my book release event. I had a panel, had a bunch of people there. I sold books. And then at the end of the day, I check my phone and it's blowing up that says you won. And so that was, it was a great moment of affirmation for me, in that on the same day that my book is, you know, publicly out, because it dropped November 23rd, but like, you know, we do the release event, is that I also win my first Emmy for all of my work as a news producer, even though I was transitioning out of that career. And so that's been a real blessing. The second Emmy I got, I had already said that I was going to be leaving news, and there was a plane that landed in the river here. All the people got off safely, but again, that was late at night. I have been promoted now. No longer am I working morning news. I'm working the late show. I'm working the 11 p.m. show. And so that happened on my shift. And I was like, when it happened, I was like, is this you, God? And sure enough, it was coverage that was Emmy nomination worthy. And I was nominated again. And then I won as well. And I got that at the end of last year.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's amazing. Yeah, like people really don't understand how much you have to improvise as in the news. Like it's incredible how like professional people can come off with everything, you know, flying around their heads. It's great. That's beautiful. Well, thank you so much for speaking with me. I really enjoyed this. I hope you got something out of it. Would you like to, you know, we talked about your book. Do you want to speak about that a little more, or other things that are coming up for you in the next coming months?
In the coming months, the biggest thing is that Beyond Bourbon Street is coming out. It is my 5th novel. It is a novel that I hold dear to my heart because of where it is and where it's set. I wish I had it sitting next to me so that I could show it to you. But it's coming out. It's available for pre-order right now. And I just need all the love and support. Go get it. Go buy it. Send it to friends. All of that comes with, book promotion. As an independent author, I don't do this, and I don't write books or sell books without readers. And the people that have bought my books have been very gracious and supportive, and I appreciate all the love. So that's the biggest thing. The 5th novel comes out August 29th, 2020, Beyond Bourbon Street, available for pre-order now.
Beautiful. You got a fan out of me. I'm definitely getting the book.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it so much. And yeah, I hope you have a great rest of the week.
You too.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.